Undercover boss orders breakfast freezes. When waitress says her tips are only $2 an hour, the girl brought him a plate of golden toast medium eggs and perfectly brewed hot coffee, just the way he liked it, without him needing to repeat the order. The breakfast seemed perfect. But just minutes later, he learned the tip she received wasn't even enough to buy a loaf of bread. And the man sitting quietly in the corner of that morning cafe wasn't just a random passerby. He was Michael Foster, 50 years old. The man who had built the new Dawn Cafe breakfast chain from scratch, starting with food trucks back in 2002, fueled by the belief that every working person deserved to start their day with a decent meal and a genuine smile. That day, he came back not in a Range Rover, not with an assistant, not in a white shirt with cufflinks. Just an old turtleneck sweater, khaki pants, and a worn gray cap, the same one that had followed him through countless midlife road trips. He walked into branch No. 23 in a small town on the outskirts, a place he once called the model for service standards. Lately, HR reports sent back to HQ had flagged an unusually high resignation rate, frequent shift dropouts, and a sudden dip in internal customer reviews since March. But Michael no longer read reports. He wanted to see it for himself, to watch, to listen, to feel. 8:00 a.m. The cafe was quite busy this morning, partly thanks to the $3 breakfast for morning drivers promotion, and partly because of the unusually cold weather. People came to New Dawn Cafe for the hot food and the warmth of the rustic wood counter. Michael chose a corner table near the side window. No one noticed him. His eyes locked on the menu board hanging on the wall, as if he hadn't been the one to design it with his brand team 10 years ago. A young girl approached. Hair loosely tied up, faint dark circles peeking through a thin layer of foundation. "Good morning. What can I get you today?" she asked, her voice soft but slightly hoarse. Michael smiled, replying, "1 toast. Medium eggs. Black coffee. No sugar. Would you like the eggs sunny side up or soft-boiled sunny side up?" he said. "All right, I'll be back quickly." She walked away. He quietly watched her. Her name was Lena. He saw it on the plastic name tag pinned to the left side of her uniform. She moved quickly to the counter, barely breathing. Her steps had a faint, limp subtle, but not missed by a man who'd spent 20 years behind kitchen counters. About 5 minutes later, she returned. The breakfast was just as requested, presented more beautifully than he'd seen even at flagship branches. The coffee was still steaming, but as Lena placed the cup down, she unconsciously let out a small, tired sigh and turned away quickly. Just a few steps later, she paused. A male staff member at the counter, his uniform marked with a morning shift supervisor badge, handed her a slip of paper and pointed at a line. "Your name's not on the tip share sheet today. Only cashiers are getting counted," he muttered. Lena replied something softly. Michael couldn't catch it, but her eyes at that moment needed no explanation. Michael gently broke a piece of toast, dipped it into the egg yolk as it spread across the plate. But the taste of butter no longer registered on his tongue. 10 minutes later, Lena returned when she noticed his coffee cup was half empty. She topped it off, then gently asked, "Do you need anything else, sir?" Michael nodded, then asked casually, "Have you been working here long?" "Almost 5 months, she answered. "With a rush like this, you must be getting good tips." "Huh?" Lena looked at him, slightly confused. Then, thinking he was just a friendly trucker, she answered honestly without hesitation, "I get about $2 an hour if I'm lucky." He looked up. And in that moment, his gaze was no longer that of a customer, but that of a business owner who just discovered that the cafe bearing his name was squeezing the life out of a waitress through a system he thought was flawless. Lena quickly smiled as if trying to brush off the truth. "But it's okay. As long as I get hours to work." She walked away. Michael sat still, not touching another bite. He pulled a notebook from his coat pocket. The first page was completely blank, but he wrote down 3 lines. 1. Why must a waitress choose between tips and being allowed to process payment? 2. Who established the morning shift tip structure? 3. Lena, dark circles, hoarse voice, flinching reflex. Who's managing this shift behind the counter? The team lead named Craig started taking the POS machine to cash out most of the tables Lena had served. Each guest tapped the tip button, 15%, 18%, even 20%, and Michael knew Lena wouldn't see a single cent of that. He stood up, walked straight toward Craig. "I'd like to pay at the table," he said, voice steady. Craig furrowed his brow slightly. "I'll bring the machine right over." "But you were just served by Lena," right? Michael nodded. "Then I'll handle that one for you. Tips are processed through the system." Michael didn't reply. He simply looked Craig in the eye. For a long time, a flicker of doubt crossed Craig's expression. "Wait, you're a friend of the owner or something?" Craig asked casually, as if testing the waters. Michael gave a faint smile. "Not that close, but I've eaten here before." Craig nodded and turned away. But by then, Michael had already seen it, that quick wink Craig gave Ryan, the staffer near the shift scheduling terminal. A tiny gesture, but like a spark falling on dry paper. A much bigger story was starting to unfold right there at the table with toast and morning coffee. And Michael Foster would not let it end like all the others. Light rain had started around 6 a.m. Thin streaks of water trailed down the front window of New Dawn Calf Branch. No, 14. Nothing stood out about the place, not from the outside. The wooden sign hung slightly crooked from long exposure to moisture. The menu taped on the fogged glass was smudged in the specials section, the ink from a faded marker. But to Michael Foster, this place used to be a point of pride. Store number 14 opened exactly on the brand's 10-year anniversary. He had once cut the ribbon, signed the commemorative wall in the center hall, and ordered the first plate of toast from the original head server. Today, he came back. No announcement, no assistant, just another stranger in a worn coat sitting at the most hidden corner table near the side window where he could observe every table without being noticed. The lighting inside was soft but a bit dull. The LED bulbs on the ceiling had not been replaced with the right kind, making the food look lifeless. A small flaw, but for Michael it was worth noting. He opened his notebook, pretending to read a messy list. But in truth, his eyes were counting the staff on the floor, 3 servers. 1 shift lead, 1 barista behind the counter, 1 staffer manning the POS station, and possibly a manager occasionally peeking from the kitchen door. All of them were busy. But one thing stood out: almost every table near the windows was being handled by one young woman, Lena, whom he had already known of. The other 2 servers, Craig and Ryan, stuck to the center area and only approached customers who looked familiar. They lingered longer, chatting, sometimes throwing arms around shoulders like old friends. Michael missed no details, not even glances. Behind the bar, Craig wore a name badge marked Shift Lead, copper-colored, noticeably larger than the others. It looked like a custom-made badge. According to HQ records, this branch hadn't officially approved anyone as Shift Lead. That badge didn't come from corporate. An iPad sat behind the counter, showing the shift tracking system. Michael squinted. Something felt off. All the orders Lena served were marked as completed by Craig or Ryan. Yet under the new system, the server must be the final confirmer to receive their proper share of the tips. Another detail drew his attention: a tip tray, labeled Shared Shift Tips, but shoved deep into the dark left corner, where no one would see it unless they were behind the counter. Michael glanced at a nearby table. A middle-aged man in a delivery uniform was stuffing cash into his pocket, clearly just finished paying. But Craig had gone to that table, not Lena, even though she had served the entire meal. A few minutes later, Craig returned to the counter, pulled a small slip from the POS machine, then dropped it into the drawer. No one questioned him. No one cross-checked. The rain had stopped. But inside the New Dawn Calf, the pressure was starting to build. Michael leaned forward slightly, watching Lena juggle 3 tables by herself. One customer asked for jam. Another asked to reheat their toast. The third just sat there with a baby in a carrier, quietly tearing napkins into shreds. Michael could feel it, the tension behind Lena's smile. The exhaustion beneath her quick, of course, replies. She walked faster now, a tiny limp in her right leg. Maybe old injury, maybe just fatigue. But she never let it show. Not to customers. Not even when Craig brushed past her hard enough to spill her water tray, then blamed her under his breath. Michael heard it. Maybe try lifting with both hands next time. No apology. No offer to help. Just a smirk, as if it amused him to watch her mop up the mess with shaking hands. The baby at table 6 began to cry. Michael looked. No one moved except Lena. She rushed over, crouched down, helped the young mother heat a bottle behind the bar. Meanwhile, Craig was leaning against the counter laughing with Ryan about rookie mistakes. Michael wrote another line in his notebook. Humiliation as a control tool, then he circled it twice. 10 minutes later, Lena approached Michael's table with his toast and coffee. She smiled, but Michael noticed how she flinched when he reached for the cream, like she thought he might snap at her too. Instead, he said gently, "This looks perfect." "Thank you, Lena." She blinked. A pause, like she hadn't heard someone say her name kindly in a while. Then she nodded and stepped back. But that moment stuck. Michael saw it, felt it. And he wrote something else in his notebook. When kindness surprises someone, something's very wrong in their workplace. From the other side of the room, Craig was watching. And he didn't like what he saw. Because to him, a stranger calling Lena by name meant one of two things: trouble or authority. Either way, Craig wasn't going to wait to find out. He whispered something to Ryan, who quickly walked to the back. And within minutes, the real manager finally stepped out. But what she said next would shift everything. He had heard complaints before about unclear tip policies, about senior staff getting favoritism. But this was the first time he heard it, not from a report, not in an anonymous email, but from the person actually delivering breakfast to the customer. The only waitress doing the actual job during the exact morning hour he wanted to protect the most. "What do you mean?" he asked again, his voice half a pitch lower. Lena pressed her lips together, then responded softly, as if she knew she shouldn't say anything, but for some reason, she still chose to speak. "Tips are split by whoever rings up the POS. I just serve, but when it's time to pay Ryan or Craig press the button, the system records them as the ones serving that table, so the tips go to them." Michael looked at her, said nothing. He didn't need to ask further. Everything became clearer. Then the dim light behind the counter. The system wasn't being manipulated by a bug, but by people. "So how much tip did you get yesterday?" he asked. This time his voice was calm to the point of frightening. Lena blushed slightly. A gust of wind slipped through the door, giving her a shiver, but she still answered about $18. For 9 hours. "So just over $2 an hour, Michael confirmed. Lena didn't nod, didn't shake her head. She just shrugged, a small movement, but enough to cause the collar of her uniform to slip slightly, revealing a patch of sun-darkened skin and 2 faint red marks like old scratches. First, emotional drop. He didn't ask any more questions. He just watched her walk away, then picked up his phone, opened the voice note app. Direct finding tips go to the person confirming payment, not to the server. System is being exploited by shift leads. Direct victim Lena. Average tip rate $2 hour. A new couple walked in. Lena rushed to greet them. As she moved, she swept her hand through her hair, covering her scratched wrist. Craig, standing by the counter, watched her and smirked a brief, knowing grin that lasted less than a second. Michael caught that moment. And this time, he understood the issue wasn't just about tip distribution. An invisible mechanism was operating here, quiet, cold, forcing people like Lena to work nonstop, receive thanks from customers, but leave with nothing but aching feet and a paycheck that barely counted. An older cleaning lady stepped out from the back kitchen. She walked past Craig and asked quietly, "Any extra tips this morning, son?" Craig didn't look at her. Just replied curtly, "Wait till the weekend." Michael tilted his head slightly. That woman's name was Rosa, one of the employees honored for 5 years of service at the company-wide ceremony 3 months ago. She was still here, still wiping tables, but now asking for tips like someone begging for mercy. Second emotional drop. Michael didn't need anything else to be sure. This would not end with a reminder email. This needed a real shift from within. And Lena had just unintentionally become the key to a door the entire system had been trying to keep shut. Michael didn't touch his food again. The eggs had gone cold. The toast had softened under the steam. But he didn't care. Instead, he scanned the room, his eyes tracking every tiny behavior behind the counter. Lena was now handling nearly 10 tables, none more than 4 steps apart. She spun like a misaligned clock, hand delivering water to table 4, clearing glasses at table 2, then rushing to take orders at table 9. Each step quick, but never frantic. She worked in silence, almost invisible amid the morning crowd. And Craig and Ryan, they leaned against the corner of the POS counter, chatting with familiar customers at nearby tables, occasionally laughing as if they were enjoying a weekend brunch rather than managing a peak-hour shift. Michael noticed every time a customer Lena served was ready to pay, Ryan was the one who brought over the POS machine. He spoke casually, tapped a few buttons, then ended with his usual line, "Tips been recorded." "Have a great day." Not once did Lena hold the machine. Michael quickly scribbled a few lines into his notebook. He waited through one more customer cycle, watching everything from the moment the guest walked in to Lena taking the order, serving the food, and Ryan showing up right on cue at checkout. Clearly, the system had been reconfigured. Only the person who completed the final transaction got the tip. The actual server vanished from the system. First emotional drop, sweat hits the table, but the credit goes to someone else. Around 8:50 a.m., a young mother walked in, holding a toddler maybe 2 years old. The child was crying, his shirt damp. Lena greeted them, found a high chair, even used warm napkins to clean the boy's hands. Every motion was gentle. When it was time to pay, Ryan approached like clockwork. But this time, Michael stood up, blocking his path. "I'd like to pay for table 5, he said softly, but firmly. Ryan looked surprised. He glanced at Lena, then back at Michael. "Are you a friend of hers?" "No." "But she served me," Michael replied, eyes steady. Reluctantly, Ryan handed over the POS machine. Michael swiped his card, selected the highest tip option, 30%. The screen displayed total $28.50, tip $6.50. "Thank you." Michael took a photo of the screen right in front of Ryan. "I'll ask again at the end of the shift who received this," he added. Ryan started to respond, then closed his mouth, said nothing. Michael returned to his seat. Moments later, Lena approached with a fresh cup of coffee. Her voice was low. "You shouldn't have. Shouldn't have what?" Said something. "There's an unspoken rule here. If you cause trouble about tips, you could lose your hours." Second emotional drop, when justice becomes more frightening than injustice. Michael was quiet for a few seconds. "What if I give you cash?" Instead, he pulled out a $20 bill and gently placed it on the empty coffee tray. Lena glanced around. She shook her head. "I can't. There's a camera above. If they see it, they'll take it back. It's happened to me before." Michael looked up. Sure enough, a camera. Mounted high-angled toward the POS, but wide enough to capture the corner table. "What about the manager?" he asked. "Does anyone check the tip distribution?" Lena shook her head. She didn't need to speak. Michael understood. The answer wasn't in the system. It was in how the system was ignored. Third emotional drop, the one meant to uphold fairness, is the first to look away. Michael looked at the young woman for a while longer. In the dim light, he could see her eyes were red. Maybe from the cold. Maybe from exhaustion. But he knew that was the look of someone who had stayed silent for too long. Long enough that her words no longer carried weight. He closed his notebook. The coffee had gone cold, but the plan in his mind had just been reheated. Friday, 8:45 a.m. The early week drizzle had given way to a soft, sunny sky, but the atmosphere inside the cafe remained as dim as before. Customers came in steadily. Most were familiar faces: a truck driver, an electrical worker, a night shift nurse. Michael Foster walked in through the main door this time, no longer wearing his old jacket. He's wearing a white dress shirt sleeves buttoned neatly, a light gray suit jacket, black leather watch, and his hair gently combed back. Beside him are two companions, one from senior HR, the other from internal audit. Lena is the first to see him. She's pouring orange juice at the center table when she freezes. Her eyes, once dulled by disappointment, suddenly flicker with a light no one can define. She knows. Craig notices too, but he frowns, doesn't recognize him. As for Mason, the branch manager, he's standing at the counter holding the attendance sheet, sipping his coffee like nothing is about to happen. Michael walks straight to the center of the cafe. Standing beneath the ceiling light, he looks around. The entire space seems to hold its breath. He lowers his voice, but it's clear, resonant. I'm Michael Foster, founder of New Dawn Cafe. A simple sentence, but it hits like thunder. The coffee cup in Mason's hand stops midair. Craig quickly straightens up. Ryan, just about to process a bill, drops the POS device as if electrocuted. Michael doesn't wait for reactions. Over the past 3 months, nearly $19 in tips at this location have been misrecorded. Mason opens his mouth, but before he can speak, Michael raises a hand, still not breaking eye contact with the stunned employees and customers. We have complete evidence. Footage from internal cameras, log data from the POS system, voice recordings from employees, and cross-references from receipts showing service assigned to the wrong person. He turns slowly to Lena. His gaze is steady. I once sat at table 4 on a Monday morning. Lena served me, but the system recorded Ryan as the one who completed that shift. The entire cafe freezes. An older woman places her spoon into her glass, her hand trembling. A barista in the back drops the cleaning rag. First emotional drop. No one believed this story would actually be heard. Michael looks directly at Mason, then to Craig and Ryan. The system isn't broken. The people using it are the problem. Ryan tries to say something, but Michael cuts him off, gentle but firm. You thought I wouldn't come back? You thought I wouldn't listen to my own employees? Second emotional drop. Every word of condescension suddenly becomes a weight. Michael pulls out a stack of papers from his coat, timesheets, tip distributions, data exports from the past 12 weeks. He holds them up here. We don't tolerate anyone who exploits the system. No one has the right to step on someone else's hard work. He turns to the HR officer beside him and signals. The manager nods and walks toward Craig and Ryan. Craig Sanders, Ryan Fuller, you are suspended immediately pending investigation. All your system access is revoked as of this moment. Ryan stammers. I was just following Mason's orders. Michael turns to Mason. Mason tries to stay composed. I didn't know, but his words are cut short. You receive bonuses based on VIP retention metrics, Michael says. But you allowed the POS system to be manipulated to fabricate revenue for Ryan and Craig. Third emotional drop. The person at the top was the one pushing the vulnerable to the bottom. No one can speak anymore. Michael walked toward Lena. He pulled a small envelope from his inner pocket and placed it in her hand. This is the tip amount you rightfully earned over the past 2 months, excluding what was tampered with. And a letter inviting you to become the supervisory lead for our pilot tip distribution program across the central region. Lena stood still. Her eyes shimmered and her hand trembled slightly. Not because of the money, but because for the first time, someone truly saw her. She couldn't speak. She just nodded, then gently lowered her head. Michael turned back to the middle of the cafe. Today, those who steal others' sweat will have no place left at New Dawn. The cafe fell utterly silent. A customer stood up, clapped first, then the second, then the third. Applause rippled table by table. An elderly woman leaned in and whispered to her grandson, see that he's the owner, and he came back. Justice doesn't come through promises. It comes through action. And this morning, in a quiet corner of a cafe, that action just happened. 1 month later, Friday, 7:50 a.m. Branch? No. 14 of New Dawn Caf opened right on time as always. The scent of warm coffee drifted gently past the glass door. The sound of forks meeting porcelain plates signaled the start of another morning. But inside, things were no longer the same. Michael Foster pushed the door open. No baseball cap. No faded old coat to hide behind. Today he came as himself, no disguises, no hesitation. Behind the counter, the first person to look up was Lena. She smiled. No more rushing, no more fear. Just a genuine smile, soft, warm, and somehow steady. On the chest of her light brown uniform, a new name tag, Lena Hart Assistant Manager. She stepped forward, voice firm, "Good morning, Michael." The usual today, Michael nodded. His eyes paused on the whiteboard behind the counter. Beneath the title tip distribution Friday morning shift was a clear list, every employee, every bill tip percentage, work hours, total share. Everything transparent, like the sunlight slowly streaming through the windows. Customers could see it. Staff could too. No more misreported hours. No more tampered POS machines. Everyone received what they rightly deserved. Craig and Ryan no longer here. Mason removed from the system. No notice, no appeal. The new branch manager came from Branch 8, known for discipline and fairness. Lena wasn't just assistant manager. She was also the first person entrusted to pilot FairTip, a real-time tip-sharing interface that Michael once dreamed of but never had the courage to implement fully. He asked, "So, do you think it's working?" Lena nodded, her gaze serious. Everyone clearly sees what they're getting. They've started helping each other because they know fairness will follow. No more sneaky table grabs. No more shift leaders self-assigning. Michael looked around. The caf was full but not noisy. Every staff member moved with rhythm. No tension. No bowed heads. An older female employee walked over, placed a fresh pitcher of orange juice on a tray, and gently nodded at Michael. It was Rosa, the one who had once whispered to Craig about her tips timidly. Today she wore an additional badge, training support, a sign she was now mentoring new hires. Michael sat at the old table where he once silently watched Lena work. Now that table bore a small wooden plaque engraved with "Every act of kindness deserves to be seen." A hot cup of coffee arrived. No need to order. No need to explain. Lena stood there holding the cup, like a new chapter just turned. He took it, sipped, then looked around as if trying to imprint this moment forever. On the wall, the customer feedback board was neatly posted. The most prominent comment came from an anonymous guest: "You can feel the kindness in this place." Not from the food, but from how people truly look at each other. Michael closed his notebook. No need to write another word. He knew he couldn't change the whole world. But in one small corner, with a piece of toast, a cup of coffee, and a young woman who once believed she was invisible, change had begun. Before leaving, he quietly said to Lena, "If anyone asks, just say that breakfast didn't just fill me up, it woke me up." She nodded, eyes shining yet steady. "I'll remember." And as he stepped outside, the morning sun streamed through the glass window, casting a warm glow across her face. One breakfast didn't change the world, but it changed a life. And sometimes that's enough.